What's up, guys? Today I am here to talk about the Clips, sort of, but old music in general. So old music, especially in rap, for no good reason, or I wouldn't even say old music. That's the wrong way to put it. Old artists that are more known for eras in the past have been always somewhat discouraged or maybe just shit on, and it's not as good as your old stuff or your first album. And that is, in my mind, always like kept a lot of older artists from continuing on once they feel like their hype moment in the culture has died. And I just don't agree with that. I mean, I could understand from their perspective not wanting to put stuff out to a crowd that's just gonna compare it to old stuff that just isn't relevant to you anymore. Like a situation that I think of with that is like Kid Cudi, and that's not even like necessarily the kind of artist I'm talking about. But as far as he just released a new album, Free, and it's a definitely different sounding than a lot of his other albums. And simply because he made those other albums in really dark places in his life. And it's unfortunate, but those dark places and dark moments like just breed creativity. And so we've got some life-changing music from him, from the Man on the Moon, trilogy, and some of his other projects that people like more. They are able to connect with it better, whatever you want to say. And they'll like crap on his new stuff because this isn't what I want from you. And they're asking for something that's impossible. You want him to make a moment for you, the moment that you were in your life when you first heard Man on the Moon or whatever it might be. And that's not what that's no longer what the moment in time is. That's not the moment of time in his life or your life. So for both reasons, it's just never going to fully hit that way for you again. And that's the unfortunate facts of it. But back to the original topic. So like, you have artists that haven't put out albums in forever that have now started, at least since like last year. I've been noticing it a lot more. But putting out projects that and hadn't dropped in years. LL Cool J is a big one. There's also a lot of older artists that have been continuously dropping. Like a lot of the Wu-Tang guys have stayed somewhat, consistent with dropping, even in the 2010s and whatnot. But a lot of other artists are coming back with their Slick Rick just came back with an album. I'm seeing so many more of these quote unquote legacy acts start to drop new music, and I love to see that because it's awesome to see what these people have to say, so much like well into their lifespan. Obviously, you mature so much. Someone who's 50 years old is going to have such a different worldview than someone who's even 30. And that's just the way it is. Those years, you're able to gain so much. They're in such different places, and they just get such a new perspective on life. But although these have been kind of dropping and picking up in popularity and speed as far as older artists deciding to get back into the game, the Clips have now changed it, because I think before it was mostly just either really big fans of hip hop or those artist specific fans that would, come to check them out. These projects weren't, topping charts or anything, but they didn't need to. That's not what they wanted to do for the most part. I'm sure they would be happy if that's what happened, but that's not what they set out to do. They wanted to make something that was personal to them and that spoke for them at that moment in their life, which might, 40 something, 50 something years old. And the Clips not only came back after, such a long hiatus, but when they drop, they sold like 100+ K first week. Your favorite rapper probably ain't doing that right now if in the prime of their career, unless they're Drake or something. Like, that's such a huge success for them. And of a a group that, everyone else would say, or a lot of people might say is old or whatnot. But I honestly didn't even see that ever. Like, I didn't see as many of the, like, maybe not derogatory, but like jokey, like, oh man, they were trying to release in the big 2025. It's like, yeah, man, like they didn't die, like, and they still have stuff to say because, they're a person. So I've always been more encouraging of that. I love when artists do that. I love seeing the perspective change, as you go through their projects. And so that's something I've always appreciated from an artist. But the Clips is like the first time where not only is it like, it's cool, it's a cool release, quote unquote. Obviously, take that with a grain of salt. But like mainstream people are aware of it. They're hyping it up. And not only that, but it did financial sales that backed up that hype a good bit. Like I said, I mean, very few artists are selling that much first week. So they like really flip the whole narrative on its head of what these projects could be, what they could do. So not only before that did you have a lot of these older artists starting to come out and be like, okay, yeah, I can make something now. Who cares? Because I think with rap specifically, it's just had such a stigma for whatever reason. I mean, I understand hip hop's always been the younger, like the youth's genre per se. But let's be real, hip-hop's fucking 50 now. So, I mean, when it was 10, 15, 20 years old, that made a lot more sense, you know? But I kind of weirdly compare it to, like, Pokemon, where it's like, yeah, a lot of people, Pokemon, that's for kids. But now you've had people that experienced Pokemon as a kid that, like, grew up with it and now maintain that with them as an adult. I know a little bit of an out there comparison, but it just, you know, rings a bell for me for whatever reason. But I just wanted to talk about like how good of a thing that is, because now I hope if anyone ever, like, I don't want to look goofy, I don't want to go fucking triple cardboard or whatever first week and, you know, just kind of look like a clown. Thankfully, I think a lot of artists are kind of past that, especially when you're at you know, older age. But I'm sure that probably holds some people back still, or would have held them back in the future once they've, you know, matured and had kind of grown. Another great example is Wiz Khalifa. Wiz Khalifa just kind of went on, I guess a rant is what you'd call it, but I don't want to put it in a negative way, but where he was kind of responding to someone saying like, oh, like this person fell off, like ain't nobody checking in. And he like goes out of his way like, no, you're not checking in. Like, I have fans. I have people that check in with my music, and that's who I rock with. So, like, when you're saying, like, oh, who's listening to Wiz Khalifa? I mean, yeah, maybe you're not hearing it on the radio, but he has a core fan base, especially in the age of the internet where that is now just kind of the norm. Like, very few people will ever reach the heights of these artists just because of how segmented everything is. Like, everyone's in their own bubble, and the odds of something going as mainstream as a Wiz Khalifa are very, very low, like extremely low. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's not happening anymore. That's just the way the internet is. Like, there's these creators and artists that like are huge in some circles, and someone else may have never heard of them. Doesn't mean that person's whack. It just means you're not in the know about them, which is completely fine. Another good, I'm fucking on point with these examples. Another great example is Killer Mike when he won the Grammy, and everyone's like, Killer, who? And obviously, like, if you're a little bit more into hip hop and like into the lyrical side of things, you would be familiar with his work, his, you know, solo maybe, and his Run the Jewels stuff. And just like he doesn't deserve it because I've never heard of him. When that's always the opposite narrative you usually hear getting spun when people feel someone falsely won a Grammy is like, oh, numbers don't mean everything. Okay, well, they heard you loud and clear. Killer Mike wins because we think he did the best. And I'm not even saying you can't have the critique of, I don't know, I think Travis Scott should have won. But mainly the people that were like, who are you talking about? Like, dog. Just because you don't know who doesn't mean that this person's irrelevant and not like worthy of this praise and this award. You just don't know about them. And if anything, you should take it as an opportunity to be like, okay, I'm gonna go check this out. I won a fucking Grammy. It's probably might be pretty good. Might be pretty bad. You can have that opinion still. Even like I didn't like it. I think Travis Scott should have won still. But just, you know, don't be ragging on people or artists for your lack of knowledge of them or a time where they maybe were bigger than they are now. Like, those things are irrelevant. Let the music speak for itself. That's always, you know, kind of my main point behind a lot of these videos, just because I know I listen to so much music that people be like blown away that I bother listening to. But like, that's just the way music is now. What do you enjoy? Because I'm sure there's someone who doesn't listen to it that thinks that's fucking ass backwards that you would even like think about enjoying something like that. Not that you'd think about doing it, but the fact that you can enjoy something like that. But I just went crazy on that rant. Thanks for listening to that little fucking TED Talk. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I really appreciate any comments that you might leave. So thank you again. Have a good one.